Welcome to Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio News Talk 1180 for the best in Saturday talk radio at 1 o'clock. And now we're on 1230 KGEO at 10 o'clock on Saturday. And for the best in Wednesday talk radio on 1410 KERI on Wednesday at 1 o'clock. Your host is Clay Koerner and I'm Marty Pay. Clay, fun show last week with Juan Williams from Fox News.
Yeah, Juan was really interesting. You know, I was really impressed. I hadn't really got to know him. Just after watching him on TV and then talking to him in person, I got a total different impression of who he is and what he does and how he does it.
Yeah, he was very personable, and he had a lot of fun with us, and off the air he told us he'd like to come back, so I think we're going to have him back shortly.
Well, we'll put that one in check.
He's too liberal for you, right?
A little bit on the liberal side.
I also enjoyed our interview in the second half with June McCash talking about the story of the co-owners of Macy's, Ida and Isidore Strauss, who died on the Titanic. The book, A Titanic Love Story. Now, next week we have the senator from the great state of Utah, Orrin Hatch, to talk about Clay's favorite subject, Obamacare. And then in the second half we have City Councilman Russell Johnson, and he's got some news he wants to tell us about.
Hopefully come June we won't have to talk about Obamacare anymore.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Wouldn't it?
I'll give you a prediction. My guess, 5-4, Obamacare is going down.
I hope you're right.
That's my guess. But today we've got a great show. In the second half, we'll talk to Brenda Weber, whose family has gotten over 60,000 signatures to help free our American POW in Afghanistan, Sergeant Bo Bergdahl. But now, our first guest, Matthew Lysiak, New York Daily News reporter, who wrote a book entitled The Choice. Now, I want you to imagine this. The Republican candidate for president this year is not Romney, it's not Santorum, it's not even Newt Gingrich.
Must be Ron Paul.
Close, but no cookie.
Okay.
But a younger Ronald Reagan. The choice, Ronald Reagan versus Barack Obama and the campaign of 2012. Matthew, welcome to Taking Care of Business.
Thanks for having me. Good morning, Marty. Good morning, Clay.
Good morning. Good morning.
What a great premise for a book. You obviously try to answer the question that everybody's asking, which is, what would Reagan do?
Thanks. I was at home watching these Republican debates like most people, and you see one candidate after another invoking Reagan. So my idea was to kind of cut the strings, put Reagan out there. To do this, we need to have a little bit of magic. We make him 33 years younger, have him born in 1944 instead of 1911, so that he's the same age in 2012 that he was in 1980, and I think the results are pretty fascinating.
Well, you know, that Clay can kind of relate to that because he was born someplace in between 1911 and 1944, so it's a generational thing for Clay.
Yeah, right. But you know, Matthew, the one premise that you made that I differ with you on is I don't think most people were watching the debates. That's the problem. We don't have enough. We don't have enough people watching the debates.
Well, there were so many of them. It seemed like at a certain point we were inundated with them, but every time I turned it on, you could see that Ronald Reagan was the topic. And then even yesterday, the President of the United States invokes Reagan. So his footprint is pretty heavy on this election.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that because I was going to ask you about that, about the Obama campaign trying to don the Reagan mantle yesterday because, let's see, how they put it, they said that the Republican Party is so far right that Reagan couldn't get elected in the party today. Why is that? Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Matthew.
I think that's preposterous. I mean, so what I do is using only Reagan's words, I put him into the campaign, and I think there would be a facet of people who looked at Reagan and said, yeah, this guy's too left for us. He raised taxes in California. He at one time supported the New Deal. I mean, he's a former union leader. But Reagan made a conversion when he was campaigning for Goldwater. And anybody who saw the speech he made, I don't think at that point they ever doubted Reagan's conservative gravitas. And I think, for the most part, he would have a pretty easy time of it in the 2012 Republican primaries.
You mean getting the nomination, but how would he do versus Obama directly?
Well, it's obviously 2012 and 1980 are different times, but a lot of our problems we're facing are very similar. We're facing very high inflation that I think the government's underreporting. We're facing very high unemployment, like I think the government is underreporting. And there's also issues with Iran. So the parallels between 1980 and 2012 are very similar, and I think when the country is given two different choices, and the choices are conservatism and liberalism, I think the country almost always overwhelmingly goes conservative. And I think in 2012, if hypothetically Reagan was running, and if Romney can just stay on message, I think it will be I don't think it'll be a close race.
You think Romney's going to win it?
I do, yeah. I don't think it's going to be close. I mean, you have a lot of people like my wife who are big Ron Paul supporters who, they're not big fans of Romney, but at the end of the day, it's the fear of Obama that's going to have people racing to the polls.
Well, one of the comments that I keep hearing is, especially from women, is they're afraid of Romney's religion.
Really?
That's what I've heard several times in the last few days.
Wow, that's interesting, because I haven't heard that at all.
Yeah.
That is interesting. I mean, I think when I hear people complaining about Romney is that they don't trust him, that that everything he's saying, he's gonna get into office and just make a left turn, and we saw that in certain instances with Bush. I mean, there's a lot of resentment and among the conservative base who trusted him, and then we saw all these big spending programs come in. So the message I get with Romney is just pure cynicism that they can trust him. But at the end of the day, it's going to be between Romney and Obama. And I don't think any moderate Republicans are going to hold their nose on this and just say, well, I'm not going to vote. No, I think they're going to race to the polls because they're afraid of an Obama second term.
We're having a conversation with Matthew Lysiak, author of The Choice, Ronald Reagan versus Barack Obama and the election of 2012.
Well, but now we've sort of moved on to Romney versus Obama. And, you mentioned one thing just a second ago about they don't trust Romney. Well, tell me who trusts Obama? The man lies constantly.
Well, we have almost 50% of the country right now who are receiving government money.
Right.
Whether through jobs or direct benefits. So I don't know if these people trust them. But, part of the thing that worries me is that we're almost at a critical mass in this country where the amount of people who are benefiting from the government is overwhelming the producers who they're taking it from.
Right.
And, I think that's a legitimate concern, and that wasn't the case as much in 1980. And another concern, as I said, I'm very optimistic that in 2012 Romney will easily beat Obama, but we're losing a lot of that, of our greatest generation, the people who hold themselves by the bootstraps, the World War II generation. And a lot of people who remember rugged individualism. And that's another concern, but at the end of the day, there's still a real entrepreneurial spirit in America. And the president has made no bones about his animosity towards business, especially in yesterday's speech.
Mm-hmm. Matthew, first... I'm sorry, go ahead.
So I think we're also going to have like a new wave of younger voters this year. I know everybody thinks this is crazy, but I do think a lot of younger voters are going to turn out for Romney.
Well, that's interesting, considering that in the last election, a lot of younger voters turned out for Obama, but they're absent as far as Obama's concerned this time. Unless something happens between now and November to excite that base, they're not going to come out for Obama like they did last time around.
Yeah, I think you'll still pull the majority of them, but not by the excitement. The excitement is completely gone.
Mm-hmm.
Even if I live in New York, so I get to unfortunately cover the occupiers quite a bit, and their passion for Obama is not there.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not there with the Occupy crowd, I'm not really sure with the younger base that they're going to come out in the strong numbers that they came out in 2008.
Mm-hmm. Now, I heard an interview that you did with somebody else, which is where I got your name and number from. But you had mentioned that you think Romney's the closest candidate to Reagan of the three that are left, which I thought was kind of interesting. I mean, I would almost think that Ron Paul might be the closest to Reagan as far as economics and Newt Gingrich on foreign policy, but you're saying overall you think Romney's the closest candidate we have to Reagan?
Yeah, and I think it's uncanny parallels. We have former governors of blue states, both of them are, Reagan in California, Romney obviously in Massachusetts, both formerly supporting very leftist causes. With Romney, it was Romney Care, as it's been dubbed, with Reagan raised taxes at a record rate, and he made it easier for women to have abortion in California. But they both did make turns, and unless we decide that we're not going to believe anything Romney's saying right now, unless we decide that everything he's saying is a lie, then he has changed. He is an economic conservative right now. He is touting free market principles and supply-side economics. And in these ways, I find them very similar. Now, you could go back and look at, for instance, Ron Paul has been around a long time, and I love that guy. But you could go back and look at his remarks during the 80s and the Cold War. And, he has a paper trail with foreign policy. Him and Reagan would not have seen eye to eye. And in fact, they didn't. But with economics, yeah, they were very, very close. But just overall, with their background and their history, and, Romney looks like he could be an actor, too. They're both kind of good-looking guys. I think if you wanted to look at one candidate that was most similar to Ronald Reagan in 2012, it would be Mitt Romney.
Let's pick up there when we come back, okay? We'll be back in a moment with our guest by phone, Matthew Lysiak, on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio, News Talk 1180.